Welcome to the Bridges of Meaning European community. This conversation is between myself and Richard. Richard told us how he got to the Bridges of Meaning through his different fascination and exploration of death and decay and different rituals that existed around the world. So we talked some about that. And then we delved into dreams and the symbolic elements of it, and I shared my experience with sleep paralysis, and we talked a little bit about it. I hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation, because I definitely had a lot of joy having it, and probably enjoy to re-listen to it again while I'm editing it. So enjoy and goodbye. Richard, let's start something, because I do want to understand, like, okay, where I landed right now and who you are and who I'm speaking to, and what yeah, let's go over your story, because I'm curious to hear a little bit about you, who you are and how you came to find this place in the internet that we call Bridges of Meaning.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, when you come across something and you realize, I've been sort of digging at these things for a long time, and then finding a large community of people who are also digging at similar things. It was great. We had with Danny the other night. We had a protocol,
estuary
protocol, yeah. And
okay, tell me a little bit about it. Was it your first time doing the estuary protocol?
Yeah, it was. Sorry, I didn't really answer your first question. But yeah, it was my first time doing the protocol. I was very interested in seeing how it sort of played out. I'm familiar enough with circling. I did it a few years back, and I found it. Yeah, maybe there was something. Are you familiar with circling?
No,
at all?
not at all.
So circling is it's, I guess, a group exercise of noticing. So you'd go through a similar protocol as yesterday. You'd introduce yourself and say, for example, yeah, what's on your mind? The next person would say something similar. And there would be moments within that where you could say, in that, like a person sitting across the way from you might put their hand up and say, I'm noticing that too. And then it develops this sort of, I guess, a tight bond or shared empathy within most people's within that. And then you, again, do a number of rounds, and what ends up happening is that it begins to focus then upon one person or one idea, and then that idea is explored. So it reminds me a little bit of this. So as I said,
where did you encounter the circling protocol?
I lived in Hanoi, in Vietnam for about 8 months, and there was an expat community that I had a number of friends within, and there was one chap in particular that was interested in setting up, I guess, groups where, you know, they could practice things like this together, like develop shared empathy and so on. Or I think more so authentic relating, I think, because John Varverky talks about this as well. So this authentic relating games, and it was really an eye-opener for me, because I instinctively, or I guess intuitively, felt very unsure about the character that was doing it. So a bit predatory. I guess it was interesting to see that sort of angle to it as well. This I guess the aspect of opening yourself up and being quite vulnerable, and needing to have that sort of deep trust with the person who's exercising the protocol with you, or exercising the meetup. I guess it was in a kind of back of Beyond's area on the other side of the world. A lot of us were pretty much lost as well. So it was a pretty interesting time. But yeah, sorry, I can go back if you would like.
Don't worry. I'm keeping in my mind all the questions that I asked, maybe that you didn't answer, and the topic. So it's my job to kill all this stuff. So you just go with the flow.
Go with the flow.
And don't worry. We settle, because I came here rushing. You don't need to rush from here. We have plenty of time. Yeah, so tell me more a little bit. You were this Friday in the estuary that you've done with Danny. We decided to do it this well, a week before that, we done it with John Van Dunk, and we decided that we can do without him. We don't need to drag John to every single estuary that we're deciding to do. And as I wrote, we are grown-ups and we can do it on our own. And this week you were a smaller group, right? You were 6 people, something like that.
Yeah, I think about 6 or 7. I think. Yeah, yeah, it was a good number, a good size for something like that. Yeah. And in the end, when we decided to finish up, 4 of us stayed back and talked for another 2 hours. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It might
Excellent.
have been more interesting. So yeah, and I'm just after getting a message from Michael 91, Michel. Yeah. So Michel Frederic from Belgium.
He also been on the conversation with you?
Yeah, yeah, and Rene.
Yeah.
Actually, Rene had reached out to me 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we spoke, and then I saw your interview with him as well, and or your meeting with him, and yeah, Rene's a great character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy Rene, and we're going to meet again, I think, on Tuesday evening to have just a bit of a chin
I
wag.
think I have a second conversation with Rene tomorrow. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do want to stress this element that I'm trying to do well before Landau. I'm trying to go all over with a conversation with people, whoever want to talk with me. So I'm going to with everybody. But I saw a certain problem with this kind of conversation. We call them rando conversations, when Paul were doing them. And the problem is that it's just one conversation, and maybe you grab on some person in the community who is maybe a little bit more connected, although I don't, maybe right now I'm a little bit more connected than I was 3 weeks ago, but still, and you think that, oh, okay, so I'm part of the community, but there's still a certain lacking, and this is a repetition that you meet every single week. So what I will do, and that's kind of a natural process, I'm going to do those conversations until I'm left out of people new people that I can speak with. But after that, I want to continue. So I'll maybe come up with certain schedule to meet with certain people on a regular basis.
Okay.
Because I had a conversation with Stefan 2 days ago, and it's our second conversation, and it was completely different. It was so different because we knew each other a little bit more. So it were a place to share more and to open up even more to one another. And that's a gradual thing that we need to, and I do want to emphasize this point, we need to do it regularly with certain people. And I'm giving myself my attention to choose out of the people that I speak with, who the one that maybe my attention gravitate towards. One of them, I'm sorry that I'm taking one person out of the group that I spoke, but one of them was like Rene. So I decided to do another conversation with him tomorrow. I really, really like our conversation. And that's what I want to encourage others. If you find somebody you have great conversation with, try to maintain it. Even if it's once a month, even if it's once every 2 months, but put a schedule, put those conversations, because just him being there and like listening to you, it can change not just the community, but also our lives, and like yours specifically. So I do like the fact that we are meeting now before Landau, but I want this to continue afterward. And that's the goal. So Richard, how may I ask, I know that the Landau, the SGR protocols don't record, we don't record them, that's the part of the decision. What did you talk about? Do you remember? Were there a specific topic that was floating in the conversation?
There was, there was this, what came up quite often was the idea of egregore and angels and demons and how to differentiate and how to get to know certain uh, disembodied intuitions, I guess, in a way, or these sort of perceptions of when you see somebody arguing on the street and then it sends a bad wind down the road, and you see other people begin to argue. Some person argued that, or said that, yeah, is that like an egregore? Trying to, my perception was that that language is of course very important, and how we use it is very important. But when a concept like egregore is thrown out there, or there's a number of other words for that in our kind of present lingo in this corner, but there's also a lot of other older words as well for things like this as well. How do we differentiate between that and, for example, the understanding what a demon is, or understanding what an angel is? So this was actually one of the topics that we sort of try to figure a way through. It's very difficult because it's so technical and it's so unusual. I think not everybody is prepared to say, okay, this is what I think, because it's almost as if engaging with the topic itself is disorientating, if that makes any sense.
But also maybe summoning those demons.
Yeah, also, right? This is also the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be careful. You have to be careful. It was funny that to go back to, I guess, how I ended up in this corner of the internet. It was like I was trying to figure out what to say to you this morning, so I have a little like I
You see, this is a good preparation.
What to tell you, okay, this is going to be an interview, but it's going to be an informal interview, but he's going to have a certain questions. He's going to want to try and get to know me. Am I going to be important in leading the interview? How is this going to work, and like I'm familiar with online because I'm a teacher here in Leipzig. So I've used Zoom for the last 2 or 3 years, and this is fine. And also holding lengthy conversations is also okay for me. So when I saw the protocol, I was like, I might be able to learn that fairly readily and maybe help out if it's needed. So I reached out to Danny and said, look, Danny, if you want somebody to run the next one, perhaps, or if you're looking for somebody on the hop, then reach out to me and I can maybe run through the protocol with a group. But sorry, this is again an aside. How I got to Varverky or Paul Vanderklay or Jordan Peterson or Jonathan Pajot, or also Van Donk.
Let's start more slowly, Richard. When did you join the server?
Only 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so you kind of a new member, but then did you encounter Jordan and back when it started in the 17 era, or it was later?
Earlier, actually.
Even earlier, okay.
Yeah, even earlier. It was maybe about 2015 when I encountered Jordan Peterson originally, because I was quite interested in Carl Jung, and I was looking for online lectures of Carl Jung, because I had a number of experiences I couldn't really maybe get a handle on or understand very well. And I'm still struggling. They're almost like mysteries. But
dream related encounter. Both.
Yeah, both. Yeah, like a kind of profound synchronous experiences, but also really intense dream experiences that lasted a number of months. But I had always been a vivid dreamer, so I have memories of lucid dreaming from an early age. So
let's go into that, because I'm also have a very interesting relationship with sleep and with the shadowy world. So you're saying it was from an early age. Do you remember your first dream?
I can remember very vivid dreams, but I can't remember. I can't say if it was my first, right? Because of course access to that kind of information is fairly low.
What is the farthest dream you can access?
Oh, I think I was maybe about 2.5 or 3.
Okay, and you right now can remember that. Can we recite some things from that?
I can, so I have an image of a an old kitchen with an island in the middle of it and three dark women moving around it. And three dark women that seemed very ominous. It has a numinous quality to it as well. The kitchen might also be in a sacristy, for example, in a church. So it's quite an uncomfortable feeling, but it's also a feeling of it being a tomb, that the door would close behind me and I'd never get out. So yeah, I think that was my first, I guess, repetitive nightmare around that time, and I lost a lot of sleep. I remember back then because of that. And it took a number of weeks before that kind of subsided. And yeah, as a child, I had periods of, I guess.
You remember when you had your first lucid dream?
No, I don't. I don't remember my first, but I remember.
You remember when it occurred, when it started to occur?
Yeah, my lucid dream started more so in my teenage years. Yeah. So I would have my dreams would also have like auditory content, you know. So I would especially as a like maybe 15 or 16-year-old, I was quite interested and quite active in music, for example, around that time. So I would wake up in the morning and have like, we need to practice that. We need to, maybe I'll write it down and we might be able to play that later on with the orchestra at school. And so I would have impressions like that early in the morning, you know, when you wake up and everything is really, really quite crazy. But yeah, I do have dreams that have had content like speech, for example, and like written notes that I could read, for example, and things like this that were very vivid. One in particular, like when I was in my early 20s, I studied neuroscience. So my background is neuroscience. So I was in a lecture, and the lecture was on circadian rhythm, sleep-wake cycle. It was a lecture given by Tom York of Radiohead, and naturally, right? And he was my childhood friend, who I'm still very, very close to, and he's also quite an interesting character. But he stood up in class and said those who are always striving for light will never appreciate a depth or quality of the darkness of life. And so he criticized the Tom York's insistence on light in the lecture. And I woke up and I was like, right, that's something. Yeah, that's something there. That's a bit more than that's something that I also haven't read before. You know, it was almost as if as above, so below, but also don't forget about the shadow sort of thing. Or the insistence on feeding the crows, for example. These sort of things I wouldn't have encountered before that time, but later on I would have seen in Jung and other writers. Yeah. So it was quite. I think I was 21 around that time, and yeah, of course I've had other lucid dreams where you could like build city states, for example, and place brick by brick in the road, but then convince yourself that it's not a lucid dream at all, but perhaps just an illusion of omnipotency that you've experienced as a child. And sitting with yourself and thinking, maybe I'm not actually lucid right now, but I'm given this naive sense of lucidity. And these sort of content, and I'd wake up pretty tired after dreams like that, because, you know, it was as if, you know, I was digging or trying to work through a fairly difficult problem. But it was not until I think I'd returned from Vietnam. I'd studied neuroscience for 4 years. I'd worked on multiple sclerosis for about a year with human brain tissue. I'd done cadaver analyses, and I'd worked. And for as long as I remember, I had a fascination with morbid things, death, morbidity, and decay, and a sense of needing to look upon these things, needing to perhaps heal, maybe not to heal myself, but those around me. So it was, I mean, when I was 10, my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis as well. So this was quite a impactful, I guess, or, you know, it had an influence on me.
Yeah.
So as I said, I'd worked with cadaver, multiple sclerosis. I'd moved to Vietnam for a few months, 8. I actually wanted to travel. I did travel to Sulawesi. It's an island in Indonesia, who have a very particular way of handling death and celebrating death, and how they bury their elders and their young ones, which is very, very different to how we do it back at home.
Is it they're still living like traditional manner in hunter gathering?
Yeah, almost so. Yeah,
like half and half, yeah,
half
like
and half. Yeah.
agricultural hunter gathering, like village. How is their relationship with death and burial?
So there are a number of things that are like really striking. And it's, I guess, the setup with the community as well. But they don't bury a family member until all family members can be gathered right around the island, around that sort of spread out community. And sometimes this takes quite a long time because they have to raise funds for this, and it could take upwards of 4 to 10 years to bury a family.
Wow. So during that time they making like a mummy almost from the Mhm.
Yeah. So the body is bound and placed within the living area. Actually, placed within the living room. Let's say they often live in communes with very unusual sort of buildings. That so their buildings are rather traditional as well, but they're like boats placed upside down. They look like saddles almost on the back of horses.
Mhm.
And they're placed on stilts then, and then within one of these areas the body is placed, and they're bound. Yeah, it's quite humid there. It can be quite humid, so they're injected with a toxin as well, I think, from plants that are nearby, so they're fixed, I guess, almost like fixing with formaldehyde. And yeah, they're wrapped or embalmed, and they're placed within before the ceremony. When enough funds have been raised, they're placed within often like a wooden ox. So the ox is a sacred animal, and an ox is sacrificed before the day before the funeral as well. And they're placed within this wooden ox up high upon upon a tower that's been made in the communal area. And I think so the spirit can then leave. So there's a gradual process of the spirit leaving, really, actually, because yeah.
So what happened if there's a multiple family members who dying during that time?
Yeah.
So like you almost need to. I'm really thinking about it from a practical way of okay. So you need to gather a lot of people that maybe you're waiting for to conduct this ceremony, because this ceremony is taking so much resource out of the family or maybe the village.
Often it's just the patriarch of the group. That's if a child dies before the age of 7 or 8, the child is embalmed within a tree, so that the tree can help the child's spirit to develop.
Okay, I didn't understand that. How embodied inside the tree? So
inside the tree,
so they carve them inside the tree and then close it with some branches and something sticky. So they almost like making a wound inside the tree, then putting the child inside it and then closing the wound, and so the child will become like part of the tree or something like that.
Yeah, like that. They like the trees are, again, it's a jungle area, so the trees are not like our typical oak or even Pague or anything like that. It would they're a little bit like banyan trees, with many different trunks and so on. So they can actually have nooks within them that the child is then they don't necessarily have to create a wound in the tree.
What do you think the symbolism of embodying, especially a child? Because so there is a certain deviation between it's not a caste system, but from the importance of the family member to the community. So there's a hierarchy, and as you said, this whole ritual, when they put on this wooden horse, they light it on fire. I didn't catch it.
So no, they don't light it. No, they actually there's a few different ways of doing this. But sorry, do you want to finish your thought, or
I want maybe you will answer me that So they have for every single member of the hierarchy, they have almost different elements of how they bury them, because maybe you later told me how a woman get buried, or maybe not the patriarch of the family, but maybe his brother. So probably there's a different elements to that as well. And I just want to for you to tell me the different rituals that you just told. One is that with the wooden horse, one is that with a child, and maybe after that we'll think about the symbolism of how these different burial rituals is maybe connected to the community.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of a strict hierarchy and relationship and so on between the community members, it wasn't that evident, to be honest. In a lot of the graves, both the husband and wife were buried together, and they're seen as the elders, for example, both equally. And often you'd have a painting of them on they have these large boulders that they hollow out to use as mausoleums. And the body's placed, or the casket is placed within that. And on the door, there's often painted like an effigy of the family. They also have a number of caves in that area. So caves are often used as burial places as well. And often before the cave, you have actually a family image. And the family image is not painted, but actually created with almost, life-sized dolls sitting at a family table, for example, right? So, and these people, the dolls are visited. They're visited quite often. And you often see out by the dolls, you have like a can of beer and maybe a bit of money and some cigarettes and so on that's left there by somebody who came and had a chat with their elder. So there's, so sorry, so as I said, I couldn't recognize a very strict dichotomy or hierarchical structure. I could understand that, the patriarch is where the one who has a bison sacrificed or an ox sacrificed for him. The horns of the animal are placed on a large pole that supports the first house in the community. So the community that I went to, for example, had about 18 horns on it. So this would be perhaps 18 generations of a family within an area like this.
Yeah.
So quite an old commune. But and also the only person who's allowed to show sadness in a funeral or during a funeral is the wife. Everybody else celebrates the person.
So is there a priests or some kind of holy people who are conducting those ceremonies?
Yeah, this was a fascinating thing. So in the late 1800s, you had both Catholic and Protestant missionaries arrive in Sulawesi on the island, and funnily enough, it also created a religious war between
clash. Yeah.
Exactly. So like I'm from Ireland, so I'm familiar with the Protestant Catholic clash, right? So when I arrived here, it's like, that's a little bit like home, but a little bit. So the sermon was actually carried out by a Catholic priest.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay, go ahead.
But the host wasn't the body of Christ, but the bison that was sacrificed the day before. Right? So there wasn't leavened bread. There was nothing like this, and it wasn't. And it was given to the family as a gift. So that was quite interesting to see.
Yeah.
So. And it was,
first of all, it makes me so proud of the Catholics that they are so flexible. No, but truly, like, and I do try to think about it historically, the amount, because Catholics were at the age of the expansion of the, let's call it the human expansion to and the connectedness of all the people on the planet with one another, and where they were in the forefront of that. So they encountered a lot of novelty with different human communities and tried to incorporate that. And of course there's that there happened a lot of atrocities, but also not. And that's the thing, and maybe that's the healthy approach. When a good deed is done, it's rarely that somebody will hear about it. And that's, I will try to connect it as well to this element of maintenance and people who are maintaining our society. If everything works, if you're doing your job well, nobody will notice it. As an electrician, if you're doing your job as well as you can, as a plumber that laying pipe in some area, and there's something broke and you fix it quickly, and or like changing something quickly and nobody noticed, that's the best thing. But the opposite is that's what jumped to our attention. There's something that mishappened with the order of the world. My internet don't work, and you start like to call all these facilities and municipalities to argue them, okay, come and fix my internet because I cannot live like that. In here, maybe I'm taking this argument to the Catholic Church and their way that they dealt with those novelties of new people that they encountered, new civilization that they encountered, like rituals, and try to understand how to incorporate them under this umbrella that is the Christendom. And sometimes, as you just told the story, they've maybe done it not perfect, but at least with some want to incorporate those people into our society. And I think it's admirable that element.
Certainly. Also, as well, just, I mean, there's also the practical side of it. You don't really get bread in places like this, and that's also the thing as well. There's no diet of bread there, or even rice crackers, nothing like this. But definitely, what came to mind when you were saying this is that, if I understood you correctly, if you're at the forefront of change, if you're at the forefront of the expansion of boundaries, for example, you're going to meet maximum dynamism. You're going to meet that maximum chaotic flow, right? But from what I gather, the admirable thing is that the Catholic missionary was able to carry the dream of Christendom, even through that. That there was such a strong base or such a strong anchor within Christendom that it could sustain that dynamism upon the edge. It was as if Christendom was almost a wave, really, passing out into something unknown, but it was still carrying its elements with it or something. But I tend to so I apologize. I tend to sort of depersonalize the thing sometimes. If I mention, I mean, if I talk about it metaphorically or symbolically, then I'm losing the missionaries who actually did this, like the real hands-on
people,
people who did this, and it's not cannot have been an easy task. This brings us to Paul Varverky's recent post on seeing of the missionary who went to Brazil, for example, at this time, and I think that missionary actually converted to the local religion. And I have to find this book because I wonder, in the end, did he actually begin seeing like they saw?
No.
He didn't. So this is, that's I mean, that's the interesting thing. Can you count yourself converted?
Exactly. That's the thing that troubling me the most, and I'm speaking in our community quite a lot about it. That I'm carrying this burden of being an immigrant that came maybe from a communist country to the Western ideas, and there's certain elements who are just always weird for me. But that's not the point. The point is that maybe. So there's also this concept of an immigrant, but maybe you can be an immigrant to a faith. So you coming to the say you adopting. I'm quite now, although I was baptized as a kid, I grew up in a secular house, and now I'm returning more and more to the faith. So I'll always be like an immigrant to the faith. It will always be something like that, and I will never be able to, I don't know, maybe feel at ease with the singing and the reciting and being comfortable with this belief. Like maybe all my life will try and will use the Jordan Peterson phrase that I only act as I believe, because I will always be an immigrant. And that's the idea that you just ask. The way to see the world anew through a new like faith, maybe you'll never get that. Or maybe you do, like maybe you'll develop a new sense of how to.
That's the thing, developing a new sense. Are you familiar with the word sublimation? To sublimate.
Please expand. I heard it, but yeah, go ahead.
Let's say you have past experience, let's say, or even as an immigrant to a country whose rituals or way of doing things is quite different from your previous country. What you find is that within the tension, you find possibilities for fusion, right? So within the two disparate parts, you have a possibility for creating something new out of that, let's say. And this is like the work of artists, for example, who come across two very disparate things, but want to bring into the world a new image of something, and that's to sublimate. So it's Freud talked a lot about this process in particular. One way to solve or one attitude to one's existential situation is to sublimate, is to find fruitful fusions.
Yeah, it happens quite a lot in science. Both my parents are biologists, and they usually talk about the most brilliant people in the department is usually people who came from different fields. So a person that was a chemist and came to, well, chemistry and biology are quite close, but people who are physicists and come to biology, or people who were I don't know, chemical, something different with chemistry, and they coming to biology, and they seeing kind of bringing a new light to this field that they already established. So that's kind of what you mean about sublimation.
But this must be quite I'm really interested in your storytelling. Both your parents would you consider, are they religious folk as well as being scientific folk? Are they very much attached to a materialistic sort of
well, or that's the way with Russians, because Russians that's the thing, we are kind of weird Europeans. So we do have the same European tendencies towards reason and enlightenment ideas and materialism, but you still have this this idea of spirits that running in the forest, and the idea of I forget how they call it, when you like see a black cat and you need to spit like behind your shoulder. Superstitions, yeah. So the different superstitions, and a very, very superstitious people. So they, in the superstition, they retain a certain element of seeing the spirit world. It's a very, I try to parallel it to very similar to Shinto and Japanese people. So there's a certain element that, oh, this is you entering a forest, you're entering a place of spirits, and they are here. In Russian culture, especially the rural, there is a lot of those elements still exist. So my father, although again, all of us grew up in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, and very scientific, very element, but still my father used this language. Oh, the gnome stole my wrench and I cannot find it. Like, where is it? And he like getting angry at us, like, you took it. Like, no, Dad, I didn't take it. You forget somewhere. No, like, I know these gnomes just running away everywhere, just taking my stuff. So there was half jokingly, but half seriously take those kind of elements. So there's a very different approach to that. So, and in general, the Orthodox tradition are different from what's happening in the West, in the Catholics and Protestant movements. There much more emphasis on, yeah, this element of the incense and the smoke that going somewhere, and it's dissipates in the air, and you cannot touch it that much, and the smell also elusive. And this elusiveness of faith is something that is really intertwined in the Orthodox, and I think that's why culturally it entered to the Russians more. So although a lot of people are scientific and understand scientific principle, they always can do this jump of faith to something completely new, and can and actually believe that it can be achieved. And I'll give you an example. There's a very famous circus performer. I think it was like 30s, 40s, 50s Russia, so during the war and after the war. My mother saw him when she was little. And he was a strongman, and he used to pick up trucks on his back, like he was picking, like a strongman. Yeah. And he broke his back. And he's broke his back and become paralyzed completely. So the legs don't work. And he said, like, okay, but I just train my legs to work again. So he developed certain machines that will like move forcibly his limbs. And he returned walking. And not just that, he returned to the circus and like taking trucks on his back again.
Okay. Oh,
and the Russian knew about these systems for a long time. So my mother's right now, he's all of them in the pension, so they're really old, but he's her professor, the one she's doing their research under, and also from Russia, from Odessa. And he broke his back when he was in his 30s, and he was paralyzed in a wheelchair. But because this figure was quite famous in Russia, he, I think, bought his books, bought his technique, and after a year and a half, he could walk again.
Okay.
He still suffered from time to time, from like once a year or a few times a year, with crushing in pain that paralyzed him maybe for a few days, but he can walk. And most of the days he in excellent condition. I saw him, he's great, like. And we knew him for 10 years, and he just told my mother, so like it was an interesting idea and an interesting story. So, and it's something that happens especially with medicine, especially with those alternative ideas of how to think inside Russia, a lot. Ideas of how to restore certain things that there's no medicine for that, but like, let's try. And maybe I'll throw another small story. There's a opera singer, a Russian opera singer, who developed a certain technique of breathing, and then he went to hospitals and helped patients. I forget what specific patients, what they were suffering from, but they were so. I think lung patients or something like that, something to do with breathing, and he developed certain massages and techniques of how to breathe, that they retain they restore their breath and start to walk again and can function again in the world. So and a lot of those kind of elements, but those elements is not following the logic of your scientific community.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that idea is, no, this is their spirits there, and I can emphasize their use and maybe solve this specific problem.
Okay.
And you don't listen that much to this group of huge medical students and professors that telling you, oh, but by our understanding, this is the correct way of how you should do that.
Yeah, yeah. I even with my own mother, we've had experiences like this. I was really I guess one of the reasons I studied neuroscience was to find out more about her condition, to see if this was a way forward that I could maybe help her. It was helpful because I could explain to her a lot of the things that had been happening to her, and explain to like her family and so on. But it was my question was a bit more of a was almost my question I found was actually a theological question, or even a maybe theological question. Maybe it is actually in part a theological question. But what I did was it was, you know, how to say this now, right? So there are a few things in my mind. One thing, to take on the idea of this scientific community saying that we have the answers, and this is the range of what answers you could give, right? The limits of our answers, and not really being able to move outside of those, because if you move outside of them, yeah, well, I mean, they haven't been proven, they're not really verified, they're, you know, not the way to go. We have this institutionalized way of dealing with issues like this, and therefore that's what we're going to do. So my mom was treated with a drug when she was diagnosed first. That didn't work. It made her quite sick. She was treated with another drug later on that had a really high risk of developing a fatal condition with it. And she was quite worried about taking this, because 1 in 1,000 people who took this drug died. I got a very, very nasty viral infection.
Before you continue, Richard, can you expand a little bit? You said she had what?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, multiple sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
Please remind all of
sure.
us ignorant what it is.
Sure. So multiple sclerosis is it's believed to be an autoimmune disorder where the body attacks the insulation around the nerves, essentially. So you can imagine an electric lead, and it has that insulation around it. Nerves are, especially nerves within the brain, their content is rather similar to this, and that allows for the passage of information, right? So like if you had a bad lead, for example, or a bad wire in your wall because the insulation was damaged, you wouldn't really get the information flow through.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get the electricity through.
And what are the symptoms that you experience as a patient of multiple sclerosis?
Yeah, so it varies from person to person, but often it involves terrible fatigue and tiredness, and gradual disability, gradually losing the ability to move your arms and your legs, and often vision is affected, so people become blind. Their hearing is also affected, so people may become deaf or have very often have tinnitus, vertigo, even like a loss of balance. But because it is a brain-wide disease, it really depends upon where in the brain the damage is.
Yeah.
Right. So we know people who have had MS for maybe 35 years, and they are using a walking stick. They're not affected by it. The disease isn't in its active state. But my mom was in an electric wheelchair within 5 years. So and she would have experienced very unusual behavior in her limbs that wouldn't have been under her control. You know, strange spasms where the leg turns on itself and things like that. So in the past, you would have almost anticipated that she was perhaps possessed by something.
Yeah.
You know, so it was
okay. So please continue with your alternate approaches. Yeah.
Yeah. So so life is hard for someone like that, and life is hard for the family, you know, and it's difficult to maintain a sense of just simple pleasures. And so she quickly began to comfort eat, and she put on a whole lot of weight, and of course that made it really, really difficult, because yeah, she couldn't really afford to put on any more. She developed diabetes. She was likely going to develop diabetes, and
Yeah.
of course, then she wouldn't have been able to get out of her wheelchair if that was going to happen. And yeah, so it was a worry of mine for quite a long time, and I was trying to figure out, yeah, what we could do here. But it's tough to convince her to do anything because she had kind of given up, you know. Everything had been taken from her almost, and it was as if all the weight that she put on was almost like a coffin closing the person within. Um, and last year, when I asked my dad to weigh her, because we needed to really keep an eye on this, and he needed to bring in a mechanical weight from work. He's an engineer. Originally, he was a boat builder, and originally my mom was a nun for 10 years before.
Wow.
So it was quite a religious island, Ireland, before. So so they weighed her, and she was about 125 kg. So I don't know what units you use.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
The British were part the British band that was over Israel, so we took the correct measures.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that's a lot. 125
It is.
kilograms.
Yeah. Yeah. In imperial units, it would have been maybe about 20, 21 stone. So so yeah, quite heavy for not a very big person, and she's in an electric wheelchair sitting, not being able to move the whole time. So I looked at different methods to, yeah, lose weight for people with obesity who can't actually move themselves either because they're so large. And yeah, I came across a routine like an adapted ketogenic sort of diet. And what I did was I needed to inform mom and dad about a few things about what food does to you when it, you know, when you ingest it, what sort of hormones are important and so on, and insulin, for example, and ghrelin and so on. So what I did was, my sister is a chef, and I have a biological background. So I created a small layperson's presentation for her and kind of devised a diet with my sister that they could easily change. Dad could go to the supermarket on a Friday like he always does and get this instead of getting other things. And yeah, Teddy, the thing is that this diet was also used for people with epilepsy before the 1920s. It's a very old diet, actually. Hippocrates is also known to have, yeah, come up with the diet for his epileptic patients in ancient Greece, right? So it's a really old diet. It was replaced by anti-epileptic medications, so the pharmaceutical compounds, for example, in the 1920s. It was seen that the compounds controlled epilepsy a bit better. So yeah, and the diet was also, yeah, impractical. So but yeah, Teddy, it's been really crazy, man. Like, she started in October last year, and she's after losing 45 kg, right?
Whoa.
So is it 45? Yeah, so she's gone. This is like, I'll show you photographs if you wish, but it's really, really amazing, right? So she's gone from this bloated, inflamed, red-eyed, swollen, the glasses are jumping off of her face because her face is so swollen, to somebody I barely recognize now.
Yeah.
She looks like her one of her sisters, you know. And yeah, so she's gone from 125 to about 80. Right. So and so they weighed her last week, and she's on the lower register of about 13 stone now. And that's in the space of 10 months.
Don't use stones. I'll get angry.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah. So she's, let's say, if you think about like the
No, but yeah,
yeah.
so probably around 80 kilograms, something like that, which is for
Yeah.
it's a normal for older woman. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's excellent.
Yeah, that's it. So there was, and it was simply just cutting out a few things and not taking the advice of the doctor who says you need to have fruit and yogurt and so on every single day. But actually thinking that, what is this doing to you? What do you really need it for? How can we, let's say, train the body to start burning off all of this excess fat, because it's taking on sugar the whole time. You want to reduce that amount because you're not using it, because you're not moving a whole lot. And the real challenge in her mind was like, how can I lose weight if I'm not moving? You know, because, like, I mean, she has a motorized exercise contraption that she uses every day. But beyond that, she can't, right? Now, but the thing is,
moving is overrated. And I truly think that the moving element of losing weight is much overrated than the because just to just to maintain your body heat will take most of the energy on your body. And the moving part is a nice addition for moving joints, so your joints won't hurt, and to accelerate the flow of blood in different vessels. But that's not the idea for weight, because the weight is the storing of fats. So in that sense, I do think that what your approach is the best approach is just changing the diet and changing the way that the consummatory elements of health.
Yeah.
You have any ideas how to help with the multiple sclerosis that she has?
I have no idea. No, I must be completely humble here. I have no idea. I think.
Have you thought about, because part of the problems that the Peterson family has is this autoimmune disease, and in general, a lot of the autoimmune disease is, I don't know if it's in general, I'm sorry that I'm saying that, but maybe it's because your body is allergic to a certain elements that you put inside your body. So what Michaela Peterson is doing, she doing the elimination and eliminate everything except meat.
Yeah.
And me personally, I've been on this journey for many years now of different elimination diets and different approaches, and I played with a lot of different stuff, and my family fasting for many years and long stretches of time. Now I'm implementing 4 times a week of fasting. So every so my next task will be on October, and I'll do like a week. And I found them so helpful. I found them especially helpful for binging. So if I go to some party or some where I'm eating really bad, after that I'm just doing a fast for a day or two, and you bounce back really nicely. And so maybe a lot of autoimmune diseases is from specific dietary problems.
It is possible, yeah. Like I have like a very mild autoimmune disease, celiac disease. So I'm allergic to gluten, for example. And I was diagnosed when I was 2. I developed autoimmune thyroid disease 2 years ago, but everybody on my mom's side have this. So there's a bit more to simply just the food. It might be a food genetic interaction, but then but really, I think on top of it as well, there's such a psychological aspect to it as well. I don't know if you're familiar with what's his name, Gabor Mate? No. So he's a psychologist, but he argues he mentioned in a talk that in his point of view, now I'm not saying this is the case, but in some cases the body says no when the person doesn't. Right. So let's say like the person has an inability to put up healthy boundaries, and they're always being stepped on, or always feeling that they're being stepped on, and they're resentful and they're stressed and all these things, and they can't really solve it, and what ends up happening is that the body's just chronically stressed the whole time, and then it dysregulates dysregulates its immune system, so it begins to actually eat itself in a way. That's what an autoimmune disease is. So there's that aspect to it as well, and there's quite a lot of not to speak ill of my family, but there's a lot of unprocessed things, and of course, like a lot of families, but there's a lot of things on my mom's family in particular that actually, in a way, are part of my way of finding Paul van der Klee. To actually bring it back to
excellent, because I wanted to yank us back to a topic that I had interest. It wasn't this one, but but please continue. How you found out Valently? You're teasing us for this is the third time, so please.
Yeah. So when my mom got sick, and I grew up in a very strict Catholic family, and I knew that my grandparents were also very, very religious, and they seemed to be the type that would stand close to the candle so you can see their shadow in a way. So very wonderful people on the street, but terrible people at home, if that makes any yeah. So this sort of type. So they're part of catechumens, and they're really, really, you know. I
Wow,
mean,
that's such a good phrase. I will just cherish it. That those people who stood, those people who stand up so close to the fire that you don't see their shadow, but the shadow is, because you're so close to the fire, is looming much larger than the regular people. Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent.
Teddy, again, that was a dream. That phrase came in a dream. You know, that was another character, right? And that's these strange sort of things that they neatly pack in a very difficult idea. You know, so but anyway, sorry, that's my my grandparents' side, my mom's side. But yeah, so when I was 10, mom got sick, and I couldn't figure out why God would do this. Somebody who had spent 10 years of her life devoted to him, working in situations, social care for a lot of the time, as a nun, and yet that wasn't enough. That he would strike her down with something as debilitating. I mean, she lost, like, she was a very active person, and she lost everything that she could do. Like, she was a singer. She couldn't sing after her first year, you know. She couldn't control her vocal cords. So yeah, it was, and I couldn't understand that. So it was really that that was the first thing. And the thing then is that I retreated into, I was a really, really avid reader of the New Scientist and Richard Feynman and physicists and things like this when I was 13-year-old. And my father, like, the oldest I think the first conversation I had with my father, I was maybe 7, the one that I can actually remember, and he told me about latent heat of evaporation while we were on a journey down to our caravan site. Latent heat is the energy that's needed to change one state into another. So you don't simply need to, let's say, melt the water, but you also need to change it into gas. There's a special energy that's required within that. And he told me about this when I was maybe 7 or 8, and I was like, whoa, that's really interesting. That's something that, and I just hooked on it, and I got very interested in science then. But of course, science was, I guess, my refuge in part. So I really, really became quite a cynical, arrogant little fecker, to describe my language, or to excuse my language there. But when I was in my teens and late teens, and doing neuroscience, for example, I mean, but this is also the culture as well. The brain is the seat of the soul, and therefore those who study the brain can study the soul. That's the neuroscientific doctrine, essentially. And my project has been, I think, maybe since that age, to figure out how do I solve that, because I know that there's a deep problem in that. So I was studying medicine for a year, and I decided, I mean, that was around the time when my dreams became very disruptive, and I became quite unwell around this time, and I decided that this wasn't the place that I needed to be. And that's when I moved to Germany. Then I moved to Leipzig. I had fallen in love with a girl that I'd met in Hanoi at the time, and she lived in Leipzig, and there was a research institute here, and I said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I could, and I was really fascinated by language around that time, and what lying in particular does in orientating somebody's life. And at the same time, it was only like a number of friends described me as, you remind me of Carl Jung, and I had no idea of Carl Jung at the time. So I had to look, because and it was weird, like, finding his stuff kind of felt like, oh, I must have come across this before. I must have read this when I was a teenager, maybe, or something. But it was actually finding like Hermann Hesse as well, the German literature, and Thomas Mann and that. And I was like, oh, this is really felt like territory that I'd been walking on for quite a while. And it put words into, it gave me some sort of feeling of being at home or something. So I'm still quite interested in Jung. James Hillman, his predecessor, really his one of his proteges, wrote a lot about alchemical psychology. I started pottery when I moved to Leipzig, and I found that the embodied practice of developing different vessels for different problems, and actually working in the world and building things up and breaking them back down, that was what I needed to do. I needed to like work with my hands and actually see and do that kind of thing to settle myself. So I found that very helpful. And like right now, I did a master's in cognitive science. It was then I discovered Varverky later on. Sorry, I haven't told you about Paul Vanderklay either. So so I discovered Peterson through Jung. And then I came across Paul Vanderklay's first commentary on Peterson. And I said, wow, this is a breath of fresh air, because Peterson is diffuse. He talks about so many things, and it's difficult to kind of embed it in in a commentary, let's say. So it's great to see the commentary of the commentary, for example. So, and Paul Vanderklay, he just gives off such a great kind of humility about him. And I said, right, this is somebody that's going to be important for me. So yeah, so I've been listening to him since I guess his first video on Peterson. So I know it's not his first video, but and then yeah, it was the Metaphysics of Pepe video with Peterson and Pageau, where I came across Pageau, and I am a musician and I have an artistic bent, and a lot of my life had been taken up by like artistic side projects. And when Pageau started describing a symbolic world, I was like, cool, he speaks my language, class, I can understand. I can understand this easily. So and it was funny because it was perhaps the Christmas before, and I'd left the church. Like, I mean, I was a musician in the choir in the church until I was 16 or 17, but I'd really left the church. Like, I was there, I was playing instruments, but I wasn't there, you know. And I remember I was maybe 24, 25 years old, going back into a church which I often just looked upon with some sort of like hatred, I guess. I felt really yeah, I had a very bad relationship with church, and I guess because I also associated with my grandparents with the church.
Yes.
Right. So I said, this is such a hypocritical place. It was only reading like Kierkegaard later and his sort of critique, and like, you know, so I became far more, I guess I learned quite a lot during that time. But yeah, so I arrived around Christmas time back home, back in Ireland, and every single icon in the church smacked me like, just, it was as if a wind was blowing through me. There were tears in my eyes. I felt I understood or had access to it, a deep and profound meaning. And it was as if finding gold in oneself. You know, it was really yeah, not in oneself as in like it was mine to keep, but it was as if, you know, coming closer to a fire again, coming out from the cold. And yeah, so that was incredible, and that really was, I guess, what it started. I had premonitions beforehand that something was spiritual. I was beginning to lose the neuroscientific grasp of my understanding of this, I guess, in a way, autistic grasp, personless grasp. You know, no one really mattered in a sense. We were simply moving in space.
Just give me your brain, I'll tell you everything about it. And that's not, that's not embodiment, that's the opposite.
The opposite, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And although you started to listen to Paul quite early, you resisted to go to the Discord, and you joined. What?
I was too shy.
You're too shy, and you just okay, and you just joined 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, sorry, it was just when I heard about Landau and I saw your talk with Matthias, and I was like, okay, look, because it's been nagging me quite a bit, and a lot of it is like a private conversation. I don't have anyone that I talk to about things like this, you know.
Exactly.
You know?
That's the point of this community. That's the point. We've searched for each other for so long. Like, I've been having those conversations for years with friends. Where do you find people to talk about real stuff, like real problems with family, about your dreams, about your spiritual aspirations, and not trying to wash each other with some scientific point of view or some I don't know, some spiritual jargon, which is which I find sometimes appalling. I just listened. Somebody on the Bridges of Meaning shared a video of some pastor from the evangelical from the south of America, and he talking about Israel. So this is why he sent it to me, and I listened to it, and I don't know if you listen to Burn Power and maybe not yet. Okay, so he is from a lot of his trips were to this organization, not organization, but the Labrie. Labrie is kind of small communities of that sprung in Switzerland and then in the Netherlands and different many parts, Christian communities that that are living in the material world, doing meals together, doing a lot of many things together. Very good, a lot of emphasis on the exploration of big questions, and Byrne told the story that first time he went there, and he went there after he were in a sect, some religious sect in the U.S., and he went there and he like knocked on the door, and the person there greeted him and said like, and she asked him like, what are you doing here? And he said like, I struck by God, and I like God told me to come here. And she looked at him like really, really carefully and said, we don't talk like that here. So just enter. And this talk, this evangelic that I was said a few moments ago that I listened to, was using so much of this spiritual jargon and like and that sometimes you can hear from American like pastors, and not just pastors, people also in the Discord that sometimes you come across a lot of this way of talking spiritually and talking about Christian matters. And it's very similar to this scientific talk that sometimes you encounter people that try to convey to you that they know. They know how the world is constructed. And that's not what we're trying to do here, or like I'm trying to do with this conversation and with you right now. I completely different. Like, no, like let's talk about our life. Let's talk about ourselves. Let's talk about big problems, but try to do it. Yeah, raw is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, definitely. We're in the trenches of it.
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of not to. I mean, not to push that metaphor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of this. I mean, if you think about it, like Peterson's had effect on people that saved so many lives. So there's a real life or death quality to sometimes as well, who people find themselves completely in the dark night of the soul and don't find their way out. You know, so but so there is that aspect to it, definitely. So just to, I mean, I'm not, so just to say I'm not using that metaphor flippantly. So
it's I wasn't like you brought, I don't know, you stressed something in my heart just now, because I don't know, I was so afraid of speaking as well with people online for many years. I dreamt about doing those kind of conversation, doing a podcast, doing maybe a YouTube intellectual, some kind of lecture or explanation or essays, I don't know, for many years. And I was also afraid and shy about those elements. And just the fact that you mentioned that you like, I can point to a person that, because he watched a video of me and Matthias, decided to join our community and decided to come and have a conversation with me. Is so, yeah, it just by you saying that, you diminished so many demons that lurking in my soul. Like, okay, even the stupid as I am, ignorant as I am, I can bring something, I can bring some light to a conversation, and maybe it convinced somebody to make an interaction and make a connection.
Yeah.
And try to come here. Yeah.
That we're like, everything's trying to come into fruition in a way, you know, everything, like that's the at the base of it, like everything's just trying.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad to hear that
Richard, I'll continue with my I'll continue with my I want to return back to the beginning of the conversation and talk about something else, but I'll still continue with my conversation forward. Let's go forward, and maybe at the end we tie something to backwards. What do you want from the community? Like, why you joined? Why you coming to Landau? Why you engaging in this conversation with me?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, sometimes I kind of consider that I'll find out in years' time why, if that makes any sense. There's a sense that I need to find a community to talk with, that I can't kind of do this on my own. One of the other influences on me recently has been Paul Kingsnorth, and a lot of his, I guess, searching has been, like, through different communities, but a lot of it has been solitary. But then in his solitude, kind of recognize, yeah, I don't have the tools for this. I don't have the, like, Varverky language ecology of practices. I can't do it alone, you know. And that was my, I guess, the shyness was also perhaps masking an arrogance as well.
Look at how many souls that were flying high like Icarus just struck down and all of us were flying really high close to the sun and got struck by something, and now that we are descended a little bit closer to the ground, we start to find each other.
Like definitely like that. I don't know what I had. Teddy, is it okay if I ask you, because I know,
go ahead, please.
I've looked at a few of your videos before. What was it that finally, I don't know, was there a time where you finally felt, okay, I need this, and I can say that this is what I'm part of? You know, like, that's my difficulty, is like, because we were talking about this in the estuary as well the other night. Like, even saying that I'm Christian, for example, you know, like, I can say it to you right now and
proudly,
proudly, but it's not. It's with a sense of, you know, trepidation. I'm not. I kind of do it fearfully, because there's a sense of, like, you don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't know.
So it's a leap of faith kind of thing. That you know, and it's like, I mean, this is why this is the struggle that Jordan Peterson goes through so much. You know, and this is, I guess, being so embedded within the scientific realm and trying to battle with that sort of culture as well. Battle, I guess, is maybe the wrong word, but to find the things that cannot be answered so readily by, or at all by the scientific worldview.
I have something because I do struggle with it as well. I struggle with those emblems that we okay, so
I know, yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. What I'm trying to say, that all of us are struggling with what isn't even a Christian. Like, what we are doing here, what isn't even a Christian. What do I even doubt? Like, do I doubt science? What it means, like, to doubt science? What it means to doubt modernity? And especially the problem of addressing yourself as this, like this Christian. This. It's so hard for me. I still didn't come out of the closet for my community. Like, people around, most of the people around me, my friends and everything, they know that I'm interested in Christianity, and I'm talking a lot about God, and like, I'm interested in that. But it's completely different than to say, no, I am a Christian. Well, in Israel maybe it's a little bit easier, but that's other matter. What I will say, that we think and that's maybe a fault of the thinking, that it's something that we take ourselves, and we should understand before we take over ourselves. This notion of a Christian or this notion of somebody. But this relationship is not something that you will never be able to understand. And the way to really embrace and understand it is through each other and the community. You will never understand what is the Bridges of Meaning community is, but you can be part of it and act in it and participate in it. And that's the same manner as, okay, what am I as a Christian? What this Christian notion is? I don't think you'll get an answer, but the answer is through being around other people who are saying about themselves that are Christian, wrongly as it is, but still just by taking this emblem, this shield. It's almost like a call. I almost see it as a call for a crusade. Okay, you're taking this call for do something, and you take this shield with the cross, and now you need to perform something, and you go somewhere to perform that thing. But yeah, this notion of maybe it's a bad notion of a crusader. I'm just thinking. I try to think, throw it at different elements and try to see what stick, and maybe the crusader don't stick at all.
Looking at the Pague, Peterson, Varverky talk.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's a great talk. Yeah.
That's a brilliant conversation. Just before you continue, I think it's one of the most important pieces. Yeah, as Paul said, since the biblical series that Jordan did. All the rest of his podcasts with other people, they're just not as important as this one.
Yeah. I think it was vital that they were in person. It was also vital that they had Jonathan Pague with them as well. Yes. You know, I think that sort of balance was necessary between Peterson and Varverky. Yeah, like Varverky at the end mentioned a sense of fellowship, right? A sense of loving friendship on a journey together, you know, and that brings about feelings of, courage, I guess. You know, you're not doing this by yourself. Now, what comes to my mind is that I'm reading Ernst Junger at the moment, and his experiences of the First World War in the trenches of Somme, and there's also that there, right? So what differentiates that, the horrors of war, and there must be something else about the Christian community then, something that brings about joy. So there must be a sense of not just camaraderie, not just a community where you can talk about certain things, because I mean, I had that in university, for example, as well. We were talking about things that didn't bring us in a certain direction. Yeah. So there must be some sort of, I know, teleos. There must be
telos.
You know, and I guess the thing is that we're all coming with certain questions, and we're helping each other find certain answers, and they all seemed to kind of map onto a teleos. You know, these how do we live in a world that, I mean, it's bloody confusing. I find all this really, really confusing. You know, it's just such a noisy time. Everything that's been going on, it's a bloody noisy time. But it's again a group of people that have taken that leap of faith, or trying to help people to take a leap of faith. Yeah. And, you know, I think but I don't know. That's what's going on in my mind.
That's the story of it. Richard, I want us to go a little bit backward, because I'm struggling with it most of my life. I have a very bad relationship with Hypnos, the god of sleep, and and it's just a topic for me for many years. I'm very bad at sleeping. As a kid, my mother said that as a really young infant and child, I really didn't like to go to sleep and fall asleep, and my sleep was always bad. I hated sleep during kindergartens, that they force you in the middle of the day. I hated that. And I always were afraid. As a young kid, I remember always been afraid of going to sleep. I'm not as vivid dreamer as you are, but I dreamt quite a lot, especially reoccurring nightmares as a kid and as a grown-up as well. So I have a few experience of sleep paralysis, which if nobody knows what it is, it's like you fall asleep, but your mind is still awake, so your body don't move, but you're still awake. It started happening to me when I'm trying to find ways to fall asleep, because I was so afraid to being with my own thoughts. And at night, even those, I don't know, 5 minutes before falling asleep, because the darkness that loom ahead, I always use some kind of distractions. So when I was really little, it was a lot of radio, and put some radio. And unfortunately, when YouTube came about 2010, I switched to YouTube. And the YouTube, there's also this element of light. So the light is keeping my mind awake, but my body is already asleep. So this is a weird place where you still see everything. Well, it's weird because I see the picture or the YouTube video. The picture that I've seen is frozen, but the sound is continuing. So the picture is frozen, and if I try to move my eyes, it's as if all the world is dragging after my eyesight. So if you know, I don't know if you remember that they were in the 90s and the 2000s, you can do it with the mouse. Then you move the mouse, and then it's like making like a line, and then it's like trying to catch the line. And so it's something like that with the eyesight of the dream. I look somewhere, and then it's like slowly try to catch up. But you cannot move. You cannot. So at the beginning, as it started for me, I was panicking quite a lot. So this is this looming terror that a lot of people experience during sleep paralysis. During the years, I learned how to stress myself so much during this phase that I will wake up. So it's kind of, but you wake up without a breath, sweating, and like really agitated, because this was the technique that I developed during the sleep paralysis. How to I almost try to break myself. I try to show my mind that this place where I'm in sleep paralysis is incoherent. So I try to twist my head around myself, like around the circumference of my head, so I can like break myself. And it's something that breaks the mental image of you in your body. So I try to detach the element of the body and the mind in order to wake up. That kind of element. Yeah. And in general, sleep was a very problematic element for me. I would have waking up really easily. So during the military, a lot of it happens so many times. You have posts that you're supposed to guard like 2 hours a night somewhere, 3 hours, depend on your shift. And you don't have a lot of time to sleep. But some like, and then you have your own shift that they'll send it, and you're so tired all the time, so you fall asleep quite easily. That's not a problem. But they used to come and wake up the people who are somebody else, and it will wake me up. So they wake up somebody who's going to the shift, and I'm supposed to be next. So it happens so many times that I'm going to the shift and like going say, okay, you can go to sleep, and saying, what? I just arrived. Like your shift is after me. So like in 2 hours. So I need to go back to sleep. I go to bed and like undressed again and go to and try to fall asleep, and then wake up in like an hour and a half to to switch. And it happened quite a lot. Like, I'm very easy. You can enter a room when I'm sleeping, say Teddy, and I will wake up. So I have to fall asleep with earplugs and all those different elements.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is partners.
Okay.
This is the biggest problem. And I don't know, but it's probably one of the main elements that I'm still single. And I never couldn't hold a girlfriend for a long time, because to spend a night with somebody, like, I know that it's such a huge sacrifice to spend somebody with me in the same bed and try to sleep with each other. It just like, it's a mental preparation. I know that after she will leave, I will need the morning for myself to sleep a little bit before I go and do my work and my regular life, because it just torture, just torture. And I don't have any question on anything. I just wanted to share with you the small elements, because I always curious about other people sleep experience and sleep, like their relationship with sleep and the sleeping world, because you started the conversation. Richard, you're here?
Can you? Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the cameras. Yeah, you're here. And so because your experience with sleep and dreams is well, you decided to share it with me. I thought, okay, maybe I have some insight, or at least, I don't know, just to talk about it with you.
It's really it's fascinating, because this is actually what we ended up talking about before we finished the conversation the other night with estuary. Right? Everybody, and I was telling my girlfriend this yesterday, everybody
Richard, no,
has experiences of sleep paralysis, with certain feelings of
no, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
I think you're back. You're still lagging. Your video is lagging behind your.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. So during the estuary, you talk about sleep paralysis.
Yeah. So this would have been a cliffhanger completely to finish here. But
no,
so,
Richard.
yeah, everybody in the group had these similar. Oh no. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Why? So you're starting to speak about it. You're saying cliffhangers, and then it's stuck.
Okay.
No. Please continue. Please continue. Okay. If something got lost, so that's the thing of it.
Just roll with it. We can talk about it in land there. The talk that we had the other night, everybody had experiences of sleep paralysis. And I've also had experiences of sleep paralysis, but not the sense that I wish to decapitate myself. This is a very, and do you do this mentally with a mental image?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's quite Gnostic, isn't it?
I tried many different things. At the beginning, I thought I need to, because my eyesight was, I was looking somewhere, and the image was dragging behind. I tried to confuse it, so I tried to move my head really fast, so to see maybe I can change something like that. During the early stages of sleep paralysis, like 2011, I think, I could stand up and go somewhere mentally. But it stopped really fast. It stopped in a certain time, so I couldn't do that anymore. And so right now I try to almost like trying to contract every single muscle in my body and almost like squeeze myself almost to death or something like that. And I know that it will produce mentally so much stress that the body will have to react to that.
Okay.
And then I will wake up. The problem is I'm waking up like with trying to get breath and trying to like relax anew.
Yeah. I'm just interested. Is there any I'm trying to get an impression about how, I don't know, maybe this is not the best way to say it, but how close it is to you in terms of, are there other people in the room with you when it's like this? As in, do you imagine other people there? Is there a
No.
threat, for example? There's nothing like this. Okay.
No, no, no. It used to be. The problem is I'm really afraid of this state, because I know the longer I will stay in that state, the more you can feel this creepiness of darkness over yourself. So this like looming darkness. That element I'm trying to avoid. So I'm trying to get out of the state as fast as I can. I tried before to say to myself, just breathe here and you'll fall asleep naturally. Just stay in that state, continue to breathe. The problem is because I trained so much myself to relax with breathing in the waking world, in that mental state, I feel that I cannot control my breathing and I'm always short of breath. I cannot like take a big breath, and all those small elements just panic me, and I just cannot stay in that state. As the moment I become conscious that I am in a sleep paralysis, I try to get out of it as fast as I can.
Yeah, sounds terrifying. Really sounds terrifying to me.
It is, but it's manageable. It's manageable. There's so many routines that I'm doing before sleep and during sleep, and all these small bits and pieces that did help. And my biggest challenge right now is to get rid of the phone while I'm going to sleep. But it's so difficult. It's
I also struggle with this as well, but I don't keep the phone in the bedroom at all. Nothing like that can be in the bedroom for myself. Like, so the phone is left on the table in the living room, for example.
It doesn't help because I wake up in the middle of the night quite often, mostly to pee, which it's another problem that I have, my peeing problem. So I wake up during the night to pee, and then I cannot fall asleep. And then they're like, I just need something to distract myself, because if I put a video in 10 minutes, I'll fall asleep again. Without it, I can spend an hour. If I open a book, then it's half an hour. And just like in the middle of the night, I'm like a zombie going around the house and like, where's my phone?
Okay. Yeah, I guess this what comes to my mind, two things, right? One thing is that you're terrified of being engulfed. This engulfment, this losing, this feeling of like this pulled down into something that you just absolute darkness, and you don't exist in that either. Yeah, is there a sense of fragmentation around this time as well? Do you feel that you're it's like, I mean, the mental image of being decapitated is fragmenting, right? The sense that your body is falling apart. But is there like sorry, it's I'm going to see, can I tease my way into this?
I'm just asking, maybe you back. Did you have problems with sleeping?
Yeah. But not anymore. And not for a long time. I sleep really well now. But I used to get I used to have sleep paralysis, but there was always something in the room. There was always something in the room, and it was I remember one time that really quite frightened me was that I was lying on my stomach face down, and I couldn't move. And there was something over my bed, opening the back of my head and putting things into my head.
Wow.
Like that, like almost like a tube or a pump, like in the Matrix kind of thing, you know, something like this. But it was placing these, it was actually every fear that came up, I couldn't figure out whether or not it came from me or if it was just simply put in there by this thing above me.
Yeah.
So I couldn't actually even say, have this recognition, that's my thought, that's not my thought. No, it was really like this sort of inserting, this sense of thoughts being put into your mind. And that was really quite disturbing. And it would bother me for years or for days afterwards. I was really, you know, shook by it. Thankfully, that didn't happen very often. But when I came to Leipzig first, and again, it's just interesting. Teddy, when did your family move to Israel?
When I was 5.
When you were 5. Okay, so you left Russia and or were you somewhere else before Israel?
No, we no, straight
You're
to Israel.
straight to Israel from Russia. Okay, so for me, my night terrors got worse as I moved away from home as well. So when I went to Leipzig for the first time, and I remember one night, I yeah, it was, so there's a collection of dreams that are happening here. So one was that I was, because I often have a dream where I'm a monk, for example, and I'm giving the last rites to my mother as she's passing away in the hospital bed, and my father is standing beside her, and I'm the one to allow her to leave, right, to allow her to pass on from one life into another, not to allow to say that you can do it because I say so, but to help her move on. And I'm doing this, and of course it's a very difficult dream. It's sad, you know. I'm quite upset, and when I wake up, like my pillow is wet, for example, from crying. But after that dream, I'm at the family table, and I can recognize where I'm sitting at the family table and what my kind of function was within the family together, the family network, nexus, or the family unit, the person to maybe carry these sort of feelings. But yeah, it was weird then that very quickly the room started to spin in my dream, and I ended up going deeper and deeper and deeper into the ground. And it was a staircase emerged, and I was spiraling down the staircase, and it was as if I was passing through, like I was being quickly updated with all of these ideas. It was as if I had maybe a store of information all of a sudden up shunted right into my mind at that point. And it was like, whoa, what's going on? What's going on? And then I woke up and the room was still spinning. And then really quickly, like this icy feeling in my chest, boom, there's something behind me. That thing. Yeah. And so I'm frozen on the bed, and I can't move either. Like I can't feel that. I don't think I can move. So I'm frozen with fear more so. And then what came to me was that the last time this happened to you, you were frightened for days. Don't leave that happen this time. And I had jumped out of my bed and I screamed into the corner of the room where I thought this thing was, and I tried to terrify it myself. And I was able to move by then, so that was quite helpful. But yeah, it was a knife edge situation. If I just kept with the fear, I would remain frightened. If I took the fear and said, right, to hell with it, I'm going to just try and frighten it. I'm going to try and fight it, whatever it is. And yeah, and Teddy, it was amazing, man. What happened was I got this overwhelming sense of peace. You know, and it was as if I was flooded with this, whoa, you know, this real, real deep sense. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning, so I couldn't go back to bed, but I remember going for a shower and feeling this is like a new day, like a really significant new day. And yeah, that was maybe 2016. So it was, yeah, around that time.
Did you as a kid, were you afraid of the dark? You remember the figures that loomed in the dark?
I do, yeah, but I was never frightened of it. I used to actually try to imagine them so I could be frightened or talk with them. That was my attitude instead. My friends used to be frightened by this, I remember. So I remember we used to play soccer on the street, for example, and I used to try and find the shadiest or darkest place in the buildings across the road from us to imagine horror coming out from it and to not be frightened of it.
You remember what kind of horror? What images specifically that you thought you're going to find?
Yeah, often they were simply just faces, but like faces that were melting or being pulled or being contorted. Faces that also were frightened themselves. So they weren't trying to frighten me, but they were terrified themselves. You could see horror in the face of them. Or just simply this first dream that I told you about, these 3 women in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, and not having anything particular about their face, but some quality of, really, yeah, just a very unsettling quality about them. But,
yeah, for me it was aliens.
Okay.
For me, I probably got influenced by Alien the movie, but also during the 90s there were X-Files, and in general there were like a lot of interest in aliens and alien abductions and those kind of things. And I even imagined a few times seeing, probably I seen some kind of helicopter maneuvers, but I was convinced it was like at top of the while we were driving on the bus in the middle of the desert toward home, and I just remembered in the distance seeing very odd shaped lights, and they were moving really, really weirdly. And yeah, I was thinking that it was that were aliens, and I always afraid that I will see them, especially when I go somewhere and do stuff and then turn the light off and need to go back. I was afraid that they're just behind me, like looking at me, and so I was trying to convince myself not to look back, or sometimes I did try to look at them, like to challenge them. And yeah, that was an interesting relationship that I had with aliens for a while.
Did you draw them, Teddy?
And no,
No.
I'm not, unfortunately I'm not that I'm not that connected to drawing and singing and also writing. So those elements are really hard for me to express. Although I did kept for many years a dream journal, and I recorded my dreams. But drawing, no, I just yeah, I just don't know how to express myself with a pen and paper. I wish though, but there weren't anything unusual.
Yeah.
Although you just told about the contorted faces, I've been in Jerusalem a month ago. I went there to took my mother's book that she published, like she went sent to print, and then I went to the old city to, I don't know, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I cannot say that.
Sepulchre?
Yeah, thank you. And I went there, and I was really glad to see that they're doing renovation over there, and quite extensive one. So I hope in a year or two it'll be nice, because the church itself looks like shit, unfortunately. But while traveling in the old city, a man crossed next to me. And it was really disturbing, because I was really afraid to look at him. His face, I couldn't describe it other than he was leopard. Although maybe leprosy is very contagious, so he probably wasn't a leopard, but he almost didn't have the face. So he had like a big thing at top of his eyes, and like really swallowy reddish on like all this area. And yeah, it really scared me. It scared me very much. I was afraid to look at him, but afterward I tried to I tried to do a small like a mental exercise to see the human in there, to see the person who's suffering. And it's quite logical. Like, okay, it's Jerusalem, it's a holy city. There's a lot of stories and people going there to heal. So of course it will be like a beacon that drawing people with severe problems that there just cannot be addressed. And to see that kind of person in the holy city, in the old city, is quite understandable. But just to relate to a person like that, and to relate to people with abnormalities
Mm-hmm.
is something that I'm finding very admirable, but also hard for me to experience and to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
I see a certain perfection and perfectionism, and I adore a certain perfectionism of the figure, of the shape, of the human shape, that anything that is out of the normal is very disturbing to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's I wanted to ask the as
Sorry, Teddy, go on. Yeah.
as we, I don't know if we're approaching to the end, we can still can have a conversation for another half an hour, but as maybe to tie us to the beginning, as you said that you went to the small island next to Vietnam, and your fascination with death, embodiment, and decay. Wanted to what I wanted to ask you is this desire, or at least some kind of longing that you had, is it reconciled a bit after that journey? Did
Yeah.
you feel more at peace with those elements of death and decay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. There's a passage, I think it's Isaiah 45:15. And it talks about, I think I might be wrong there, I have to check it, but I think it's I read it in Paul Tillich's work, and it's a passage talking about the exiles from Babylon. And in that passage, it's described like we are simply the grass in the wind, and as the grass falls, we fall. But the wind nonetheless moves through us, and we have that time to experience, to acknowledge the wind, and to know that it gives us life as well at the same time as it takes it away. Um, and it really, yeah, that was a great question actually, because that actually brought me back to when I was 10, figuring out that why would God do this, for example, you know? And I think those two, that journey to pseudo SE was connected with that original question as well. Why would God do this? But if he has done this, what is the best way that we ourselves, this sort of meek and fumbling kind of creature, how best can we honor what it is to pass from this world and recognize what this world is, and how can we not so much remember those who have passed, but because I don't think that's what we're trying to do. It's like, you know, you talk about building community and fellowship and so on, and it's both in the present, but it also is in a sense kind of eternal as well, because the motivation to do it comes up now and again and again and again, and it's coming from somewhere, you know, the motivation to do that. And in that sense, like the feeling is that it's internal, because we can share a lot of the experiences that we're talking of are experiences of, like, yeah, limit spaces, numinous qualities, things that are really ghostly and unknown to us, and things that really, really confuse us. And that also ties in really well with the missionaries we're doing, right? They're going out into the frontier as well, and they need to have the courage to face what the frontier means. You know, the frontier means, well, the unknown, right? It's utterly chaotic. And you can imagine many of them did end up decapitating themselves along the way, in madness, or in perhaps losing their own mind along the way and moving towards a different direction, or coming across different ideas that took them, you know. But yeah, so it has, but in a way, Teddy, like it feels like that, to answer that question, have I come to peace with death? Yeah. Would I be frightened to say that I would die tomorrow? You know, one part of me is like, yeah, of course I would be. And another part is like, yeah, but look how much you have, look how much you've seen. You know, can you not be happy with that? You know, it's really, yeah, these questions, you know, they lead to more, and they always lead to more. And there's this hunger to push into them, to edge into them. And but yeah, I think the trip to Sulawesi was definitely worthwhile. And yeah, it gave me a sense of like reverence for the dead rather than, you know,
Maybe
sorry, but
I don't be. I'm an interrupter, so it's not that I like just I try to because you're saying you are doing right now those not vases, pottery and different things. Have you considered doing an ash for the dead kind of
mm, mm,
potteries and
mhm.
connect those two elements of interest in the dead and the decay with the and the burial element with this what you're doing right now?
The urn, right? I think is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about? Yeah, like making urns. Um, I oh God, it's really funny that you asked that. Because it's not a no, the urn hasn't crossed my mind. The vessel being a, and I think this is mentioned in perhaps a Kabbalah text or something. I saw this talked about with Ian McGillichrist and Jordan Peterson first, that the I'm not entirely sure who, but it's like it's a part of a creation mythos that a spark was placed within the vessel and cracked each one, and the vessels need to come back perhaps together or reorganize themselves or maybe be built up again so that they could hold the spark, you know, they could hold the process, they could hold the mentality or the emotion or the experience. And for me, pottery has been about, it's more of like it's a practice. It's a little bit like a prayer, you know. It's a little bit like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
staying with the moment and being intentional towards something, you know, and that it gives me access to like a maybe being really here, you know, that sort of feeling. And it calms the busy mind, or just a sense of being completely and utterly bewildered. But the no urns have not, right. But sorry, and I ramble because I'm Irish, and it's what we do.
Excellent.
But no, I do have an image. Next year I'm hoping to begin a PhD in Freiburg in Breisgau. I'm not entirely sure yet what will happen, but what I want to do is, I had an image in my mind when I was studying medicine, when I was visiting a patient who had a stroke, 2 strokes, and it was I was trying to understand how he saw the world, right, so that I could understand his situation, the situation he was in. Not so much what he saw, but how that came
Mm-hmm.
about, how it was realized to him, you know. And the image in my mind was also like, yeah, there's also a sense that he has lost something, and does he recognize that he has lost something? You know, he has lost an ability to recognize the world in a particular way, like my mom had, for example, or has. And in that sense, what comes to my mind is an image of a mausoleum, and the image of something like a resting place, a place of processing grief, a way of, I don't know, letting something lie, but in a I don't know, it's like reverence to something that has passed. So that it's, so that I don't know, the I don't know.
Uh,
It's
Unfortunately, the Muzzalioum image is completely distorted in the Russian mind
okay, okay.
because this is where Lenin is lying and
Yeah, okay.
where
Yeah.
Stalin is lying, and there is yeah, this is for people who look at the specific well what the Russians I think managed to do better than the French concerning the Sun King is trying to embody this idea of the ruler as a as a person to be worshipped. And the French try to eliminate, kind of, maybe in the Enlightenment, eliminate the idea of the traditional religion and God, and maybe to replace it with this Sun King.
Yeah.
And they failed quite miserably because the forces of the Republic was maybe stronger. But in Russia, they managed to do that much more successfully.
Okay.
And I don't know how and why, maybe because the people are much more rural and less educated, but maybe it's some connected to a deeper ideas about Russians. But just you talking about kind of veneration about mausoleums, and in at least in the Russian imagination, it's something that is something of perverse.
Maybe I can give maybe a better idea. And this is actually a Russian filmmaker, Andrei Tchaikovsky. Yeah,
Tarkovsky.
Tarkovsky. That's it. Have you seen Stalker?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So you know, towards the last few moments of that film, they're in a room and it begins to rain.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they're sitting together, the scientists and
the author, I think, scientist,
yeah.
author, and the stalker. Mm-hmm.
And the stalker, yeah, and the stalker brought them towards the edge, right, the firmament, right. So between their world and the next, there's rain between and something passing. This is a little bit like, you know, the feeling, the perception that you get with sleep paralysis when your eyes are not following correctly,
Mm-hmm.
right. It's a sense of the firmament, right. And that's really disorientating, because you become when you're at that limit space, you actually begin to dissociate, or
Mm-hmm.
you not dissociate, but actually disperse like ink would in water, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a terrifying feeling. But it's also the place from which, you know, like as I told you, like I looked at the dark places to find shadows,
Mm-hmm.
spirits, and so on, right? It's the place from which places like things like that come from. You know, it's like looking into that dark well, for example, and having your imagination run wild. But there's something also within that that is that allows us to this is really nice. This ties back with your idea at the beginning with the sensibility, the Russian sensibility of not being too scientifically driven, but also thinking about, you know, the spirits of the woods, for example, and the Shinto you mentioned. Ireland is very much like this too. We have the fairy circles and so on, and this sort of way of thinking. So it's really at home with me when you talk about things like this. The sense that the world is enchanted,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so he brings, like, the stalker brings them intuitively again, right? This is a psychopomp. He's really I don't know, like a spiritual guide or something like that. I don't know how you describe him, but he's using an intuitive vision with this little white band tied to a nut to find a way into that room, right? And that's the idea that I have. That's the image I have in my mind of the mausoleum, the passage between life and death,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
Because you're actually moving from being embodied, being alive, passing your uh, sharing experiences with people, having that flame pass from your heart into the other,
Mm-hmm.
and then that fire finally being extinguished and passed out into the rain, essentially, in that room, right? And that's that sort of passage. Just I guess that's, yeah, I don't know. You see, that's how far I've got. I have no idea where to go with that then. Like, I mean, yeah, yeah.
Have you watched the film Departure? It's a Japanese film who won the Oscar 2011. About okay, so the movie is about a young Japanese who's taking a work, and he just needed a job, and he takes the work of helping to prepare the body for burial, for the service. And he's training with his old master, and first of all, there's two at the beginning of the film. They show you how the ritual is, like how you're supposed to prepare the body for it to be presentable before burial. So, and every single way of how they're preparing it's done in this, like the Japanese, like the extreme way of every single movement is calculated. So how you twist the body, how you put something underneath it, how do you rip, and you do it in front of the family. So it's something that is done for an hour in front of the family. And at the beginning of the movie, you watch how it performed, and it's kind of, I need to rewatch this movie after our conversation, and it's a very interesting meditation on death and on the symbolism of the importance of rituals of death to family and to departuring, and the element. And this person is doing the embodiment. He is this figure of priest or the shaman who is doing the transition from one world to the other. And the most interesting element is, because I seen it in theater, that when the movie is over, at the end of the movie there is I forgot how the name, and the lines of all the actors and everything.
Oh, the cast, is it?
Yeah,
the credits.
The credits. Thank you. So when the credits roll, at the behind them, you see him do it again. This money, and everybody in the theater just standing because the credits is starting, trying to leave and cannot, and just staying there and watching him perform the second time in the movie, but just in the credits, like another 20 minutes of how he do that with all like the small elements. So there's a certain enchantment element in that moment of how this person is doing that, is connecting us, and you can see how the crowd as well going to for the movie feel that as well. I think it's called Departure. I'm pretty sure.
I've written it down. I'll certainly take a look at it. Do you think? Yeah, is it? Are they enchanted by it? Do you think, or?
It's because a ritual is an enchantment moments.
Okay.
Rituals are those moments where the physical touches the mythos, the story.
Yeah.
And I took it from Peugeot, but I had a conversation with somebody 2 days ago about the resurrection, as the resurrection is the moment when the physical meets the mythos. And in that specific moment, and that's why it's so hard for the materialism and the materialist point of view and the scientific point of view to reconcile this moment. Because how you reconcile the moment when the mythos and the physical touches?
How does that work?
Yeah, how it does work?
Yeah.
So I do think symbolically, as we talked about the rituals of burial, I do think there's every single ritual like that is a ritual of connecting the two, or imitation in connecting the two, the mythos and the spiritual and the physical. Yeah. Richard, I think it's a good place to stop.
I'm getting a bit hungry, to be honest.
Excellent. Because I like that every single conversation that I'm doing, I'm stretching more and more the time that I can maybe manage until I'll become Joe Rogan and can do 4 hours. So I really enjoyed our conversation. It was fun to explore with you the shadowy realms of the world, and I will want to return and continue with you a few conversations, a few talks like that. I don't know when, because the problem is that we have Landau, which is in a week and a half. And after Landau, probably there'll be another search of videos, because I will try to gather everybody's opinion about what happened and how they felt and what they're feeling, and try to get dug out the filth. Because before we all met each other, it's like nice and like, oh, I just want to meet people and hug people and be and make friends. But after, what usually happen, you came across a real people, and there's conflicts and there's a certain elements, and I'll try to get from people a more disappointment, disappointed idea about what happened in Landau. Because if we manage to get that, first of all, it means that we are human, because in every expectation we have disappointments. And for the people who are organizing everything and trying to make our community better, as myself, maybe we can learn something that people may be lacking, or we need to add more of that element or this element, and that kind of thing. So probably after the Landau, we had a like official conversation like that, but after that I'll be happy to continue our conversation once in a while.
Good. I look forward to it. And Teddy, thank you for taking the time again today. I really appreciate this and what you do. It's really very
I don't know, it's feeling to me that it's so, I don't know, I just needed to do that and felt easy. And I don't feel that I'm doing that of a service. I'm just recording conversation with people. So
in a sense, there's one thing just to finish up. I'm really looking forward to how you're going to title this. I think that's going to become that's a feeling of other people as well. How is he going to title this conversation?
Okay. I tell you, everybody, I tell you the truth. It's there is a problem with YouTube. The one problem is, to me, to do captations and chapters for the episode, I need to listen for it in advance and do it in the moment that I'm uploading it. And the uploading takes a lot of time. So if I'm stressed with time and I want to upload a video and I add the chapters after, then it won't register as something. So I need to I listen to all of the conversation up front, but it's so hard to give it a title. It's so hard.
Find the right name. But no,
for our conversation, it's so easy. It's like that. So don't worry.
But I'm being playful here. I'm looking forward to it, Teddy. And also to Lando. Really, I'm very excited about that. I'll leave you go. Thank you very much, Teddy. Thank you. All the best.
Bye, Richard.
Bye.